Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. And today has been a very busy day, but I am glad to be back home and ready to share some information with you from Dr. Reg McDaniel. He is an amazing man and has done, if you're looking for other videos that we've done together, if you'll look at our wellness playlist, you'll find a lot of information. So we'll be right back with Dr. Reg right after this. Welcome back, Dr. Reg. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So we've talked a little bit before about the Blue Zone. We did one video about it, but you have some more information that you'd like to share with us today.
Yes, I would say the major topic in nutrition and in health, particularly in the alternative complementary area, which is growing, of people recognizing that proper nutrition and various things that you can do to improve your health doesn't require a professional or go into a drugstore or anywhere or hospital to buy something. And what we're focusing on again is the blue zones. And I was given this book about the blue zones, which was very revealing to me because I had seen two segments in the National Geographic magazine, which I am told is the #1 publication for volume on planet Earth, and it's present in every library, and so it's all worldwide. Well, this on this cover of this book is Dan Buettner, Buettner, and he went to the National Geographic Society and obtained 5 grants. They started in the year 2000, and they were for him to go out and look for geographic sites that there is longevity with good health. And we have said something about this. And what they found out is that it's primarily islands and peninsulas that are separated from the primary urban areas. And that, for example, one of the first ones identified was the island of Sardinia that is to the west of Italy. And up in the mountains, a researcher found out that Buettner went to that the customs and the activity of daily life was much like it was in Roman times. There wasn't any electricity. There weren't any engines.
Wow.
You went somewhere, you walked, and everybody had a garden, and the food was primarily plant-based. And they found out there were common denominators to all of these blue zones, that they were primarily plant diet. Nearly everybody had a garden, which is very good because if you have your garden or your orchard, you don't pick the produce and take it and put it in the kitchen when it's green. You let it ripen on the plant. It tastes better, it looks better. And in fact, it has to ripen on the plant for the nutrient molecules in the plant to be put into the fruits or vegetables that our cells call for in cellular synthesis to make bioactive molecules that run the biochemistry and the physiology of life. Also, as I pointed out, they didn't have motors, electricity. They walk, and in these different blue zones, they're either fishermen or farmers or herders herding goats or sheep or whatever animal they do, and they go up and down different grades of the soil, which if you've ever gone out and walked up some stairs, you know that walking up a grade is more demanding. And it was their environment, they point out, none of these people in these blue zones started out or had the idea, I'm going to do so and so and not do so and so because I want to be in good health and have longevity. It just happened because of their environment. And the term blue zones came from Sardinia because the researcher kept telling Buettner, you just can't believe up in the mountains above the clouds how blue the sky is. And so Bruckner focused on that to call all of these areas a blue zone.
Interesting. I didn't realize that was applied to the color of the sky. You know, we're all covered with chemtrails now, and so much of that poisons in the air and all that. That it's interesting that he specifically identified that that was such a point to him to call them, and that they all had that in common of a clear sky or a blue zone.
Well, we'll repeat some of this in the slides, but this is very interesting because not only has National Geographic come out with this book, it's published by National Geographic, but on Netflix, they even have a video out now. And I suspect and I expect that the general population that is so drug and sickness industry oriented is going to be significantly influenced to realize that we need to watch what we eat and how much we eat and what our choice to eat is, and reduce the amount of animal tissue and exercise. And unfortunately, I often think of my grandmother who used to chop wood, put it around a big black pot and heat up the water, and then had a washboard that she would work the clothes in and then rinse them, and then heavy as they would be, put them out on the line to dry. And contrast that with my mother, who would go to a washateria where they had a Maytag washer, and you had 3 tubs around, and you just moved it from the washing machine through the wringer to these tubs. And now my wife has 2 things there. She just puts the dry clothes in, and everything's automatic, and it even wrings them out, and she just puts them over into the dryer. And we don't even have a clothesline. And this is the type of thing that the blue zones don't have modern development. But in this blue zones, there is an emphasis that I will probably bring up again that is not in the National Geographic magazine. In addition to what your diet is and your exercise, they point out originally that the individuals need to have a purpose in life. And he really emphasizes that in this book written by Buettner, that, for example, being active in your church is probably good for, he says, for 3 years of additional good life and in good health. But in all these different places, he emphasizes that your relationship with multiple generations of your family, and these blue zones, oftentimes the person that's 90 or nearly 100 knows and sees and interacts with their grandchildren, not just their children, but a 3rd generation. And that they get together and have dinners together of these vegetables and fruits and nuts and berries. And that if they do have meat, it's usually for special occasions. And oftentimes, like in Okinawa, they just cook it over and over again, kind of in a stew, until the meat is virtually down to amino acids that make up meat. And all of this is not a wild idea, because I came under the influence of a individual at the Cleveland Clinic, Dean Ornish, MD, who developed a dietary program very much like the individuals in the blue zones, except one day a week, he says you can have anything you want.
Right.
Well, I weighed nearly 300 pounds at the time that I was introduced to him. And by reducing portions, eating more fruits, vegetables, nuts, berries, I lost down to about 235 pounds. I've gained some
Wow.
of it back. Yes, I'm up to about 240. Uh,
Hmm.
and of course, with these,
You're also over 6 foot tall. You're like 6'4" or something.
oh,
So
6'2".
6'2". Yeah, you're very tall for perspective.
At that time, when I was young, I was considered tall and was usually the center of a basketball team. Now
Yeah.
the guards are 6'5", and they have people nearly 7 foot, and they can jump higher than I ever jumped in my life. But
Wow.
anyway, in this book, uh, uh, Bruckner really emphasizes that you're probably not going to, in the modern society, do the things that will give you good health and longevity unless you have a purpose and have these interactions in your community and your
Hmm.
family. And I will go in it. So, with this kind of introduction, uh, one other point I wanted to make is the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act was passed in 1994. We frequently refer to it as DSHEA, the initials for each of those words. We started seeing in 1994 individuals that added the plant materials that we have in New Eden, which we focus on in this series, and we were getting about 75, 85% of what you see in the blue zones of these individuals. And if you add exercise to it, you can get almost the same amount of benefit as the blue zones. In other words,
Wow.
diet and exercise is very important. And in this book, he emphasizes the purpose in life, which we'll go into a little more. And with that, uh, that you're putting back into the diet by dietary supplementation plant molecules that used to be in the family garden and the orchard, and your body responds to these nutrients that are not present in a lot of the current food. You keep hearing about processed foods are not healthy. Well, these nutrients have been missing or destroyed in processed foods. And so, with that, let's go to the first slide.
Okay.
Well, I told you how the name for Blue Zones got decided, and that the author of this book is Dan Buettner, and that he got 5 research grants from the National Geographic Society, and he finally got a final that started in the year 2000. And in 2021, he even got a grant from the National Institutes of Health, the Aging Division. Next slide, please. Now, an important thing is that Buettner points out in the first of his book is that Dr. Keyes and Dr. Kane from Minnesota did research in the past and have published that heredity has a low impact on your quality of life and longevity, that it's certainly no more than 25% or 1/4 of the determinants. So the good news about that is what you do has about a 75% impact on your quality of life, your health, and how long you're going to live. And so you can do something. And just because your brother or your uncle or your grandfather or your father, say, died of a heart attack, if you follow the Dean Ornish diet that I did for a period of time, you can reverse the deleterious effects that may have taken your relative. So, in this blue zones, the people were primarily the product of the environment in which they lived. and they didn't have the choices that we have a French fried franchise on every corner where you have
Right.
highly processed foods, and we're eating natural food. Next slide, please. I showed you before we started the front of this book, and if you'll notice, he's got his hands on a bicycle, which is one of the things they really promote in this book, because we have so many benefits with electric motors and gasoline motors and different things that reduce the amount of effort we have to put out, because in these blue zones, these people were working because they didn't have all these benefits in their area. And this as again, he emphasizes a lot more on your mental attitude and having a purpose in life than anything else that I have read, because he points out in there that if say you have a mild heart attack or a problem or a stroke, and a doctor tells you you need to change your diet, and you are really into it and are concerned, and he gets you going to a health spa to exercise, that within 2 years, less than 5% of people will still be doing this. And
Really?
yes, and that's
After a stroke or heart attack, though? I mean, you would think that would scare them straight to change things.
well, my barber was a perfect example of this. He had a heart attack, and lo and behold, at 5 o'clock in the morning, he was on the treadmill, and
Yeah.
he was eating like a cow instead of like a cat or a hog,
Yeah.
and he looked fit as a fiddle. But by about 2 years, he was no longer going to the treadmill, and
Wow.
he had gained weight, and lo and behold, he had a second heart attack, and that took him away. But this is just human nature. It's very hard for human beings to actually do what they know is the
Is
best
the right.
path to take for good health and longevity. And it's just hard to do it unless you've got, as he points out in the blue zone, some over resting purpose. And I might add that these Zoom lectures, I think, are one of the great impetuses that I have of a purpose, because I believe that every person on earth can benefit from what has been seen in the blue zones, and you can do it because in the blue zones, they found out in California that there's a group of about 20,000 Adventists in Loma Linda that are one of the blue zones, that they live longer and in better health because they use guidance from the Hebrew Bible primarily. That it's this is so fundamental that I have a list of biblical scriptures that point out which the Adventists follow, and they tend to be more vegetarians. Nearly all of them have a garden, and certainly with their emphasis in their church, they have find purpose. And the main thing I mentioned about is you don't have to move to a blue zone to get the benefits. You can add the plant materials that are in New Eden that we emphasize, that I have now about 39 years focus on what to put together in this formulation to put back into your diet, what you used to get in the family garden and orchard. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Now, Sardinia, and this is a picture, and you can see the sky in the distance there, that the very first blue zone was identified. And the point was that the environment was that people were living there in the mountains just about like they were 2,000 years ago in Roman times, in the time of the life of the fishermen from Galilee in the New Testament. Next slide, please.
That is beautiful.
Now, in the blue zones, over and over again, it shows in the kitchen, not popping out something out of the freezer, but from the garden, she what's the word I'm trying to find?
Saute?
She's got the skillet there.
Yeah, she's sauteing the vegetables.
Yes, and this is a common denominator of all the blue zones is everybody has a garden, everybody prepares real food that matured on the plant or that the genes in the plant can put it. And this is one of the problems of the modern market. When I was a kid, nearly all your markets and grocery stores were owned by a local family, and you seldom had anything more than about 50 miles from the store. And we could have just certain things about 4 to 6 weeks a year during the local growing season. What has changed? There are national markets, and lo and behold, we can have watermelon, cantaloupes, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, you name them, 12 months of the year. How can they do this? Well, we've got agribusiness that follows the growth zones across the globe, and they harvest the produce when it's green so it'll have a shipping life and a shelf life. Well, what has really changed is now with the advent of refrigeration and freezing, the plant ripened fruits and vegetables used to be thrown on the ground because they would be rotten by the time they got to the market. You could rush them to the freeze dryer to make a powder out of them and put them into a dietary supplement, and you've got the nutrients that the genes in the plant put in there that's required to ripen on the vine. And that's why dietary supplementation, such as we have as an example in New Eden, that I have spent 39 years focused upon trying to bring this about, and that by adding this to your diet, you get many of the benefits of the blue zone. Next slide, please. This emphasizes that in all these blue zones, the people exercise as part of their life, and walking up and down the hills, herding goats, sheep, cattle, whatever it is important. And that the activity of fishing is in your environment, gives you exercise. Working your garden, which is in all of them, gives exercise. And if you need to go somewhere in a hurry, driving a bike. And actually, as we say at the end, there are cities that have tried to copy what's benefited in blue zones, and they've established areas where you only can get there by going on a bike or a scooter, and that they put bike trails beside where automobiles have gone in different cities. So you can put some of the activities that are in the blue zones into a modern society, urban society. Next slide, please. If you'll notice so many slides, that's what National Geographic is particularly noted for. And there are just huge number of slides in this book on the blue zones by Bruckner. And this is one where on the one side there, you have the multiple generation family sitting there having a meal together with the at the head of the table, the oldest patriarch or matriarch is usually sitting. And it points out that in this setting that oftentimes there is just spontaneous dancing, and that this is common in the blue zones, that the interaction of all the generations of the family, eating together, primarily vegetables, and spontaneously dancing to show their joy and part of the purpose of life. Next slide, please. Also in the blue zones, it's common to have different
Hobbies.
hobbies. That's the word I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
for. And that
Got it.
beekeeping is a common one. And if you take care of these bees, you lift things, you exercise, and oftentimes the women get involved in quilting or knitting or basket weaving, both males and females. And crocheting is another very active thing where people get together and do this. And I think that women are very more prone to do physical and mental activities together, kind of like a party, than unfortunately men. But they're out there hunting or fishing or herding. Next slide, please. This is an example of a patriarch with the hat at the far end of the table. And there are three generations of the family sitting around at usually this is very common to be about once a week or certainly once a month. And they also do this on special occasions. And on these special occasions may be the only time that they serve meat, that this daily staple is plant food. And this is just another pictorial example of what goes on in the blue zones. Next slide, please. Here is a grandfather that's 90 years old, and his granddaughter is with him. And if you look at their faces, you can tell that there's affection and that this purpose in life, having affections with multiple generations, is a very powerful incentive that in our urban society can help you do those things that you know you should do that you tend not to do, which Bruckner in his book keeps emphasizing that the purpose is so important to cause you to be more cognizant and to follow through and keep doing those things that are healthy. Next slide, please. This is just example in a peninsula where is isolated from the areas, and he's going uphill herding these sheep. And this is one of the blue zones and one of the activities of this herding and walking up and down the different grades of the soil and the lay of the land. Next slide, please. This is just to show that for snacks, that in one of these blue zones, this is typically what they have on the table, and there's about 5 kinds of nuts there. And your nuts are particularly a source of omega-3 fatty acids. That's one of the things many people that criticize plant-based diets is they'll say, well, you've got to have meat or salmon or one of your fishes to get your fatty acids and omega-3s and 6s. Well, in fact, Brazil nuts and walnuts are loaded with omega-3s and 6s. And all the nuts contain, one of the reasons they look different, they taste different, and are different configurations, is that their genes produce different types of nutrients, which it's good to add to your diet. You shouldn't just eat peanuts. You should eat peanuts, pecans, walnuts, cashews, Brazil nuts, you name them, have a variety. Fact is, I frequently recall from my childhood hearing my aunts talk about their mother had told them, if you want to be healthy, eat different colors of fruits and vegetables. Well, not only the color, but here with these nuts, you see the different conformation. And also, go ahead.
It's just interesting. My mom was always adamant about our plate being, and my husband now loves to cook. He's taken up a hobby of cooking. And one time he served me an all black meal, and I was just like, that is just not appealing. He had purple potatoes, uh, dark mushrooms with wine sauce, and a steak. And I was like, I need all the colors, like so we always try to have, 2 different color vegetables, and then have our, starch or pasta or whatever, and then, we do have meat at most of our meals, but, it's interesting how it's more appealing, like that's your body craving those colors or that variety.
Well, we could have a picture very much like this with all types of berries there because they have different types of nutrient molecules in them to taste different, to look different, to have different consistencies of the flesh of the nut or the berry. And variety is something that our genes need to be able to hook together in cellular synthesis the nutrients to make bioactive compounds that run the biochemistry of life. That's a constant recurrent theme. Next slide, please. This is, again, colors being emphasized, and these are different vegetables, and you can see such a range of colors, and that reflects that in the plant, the nucleic acids are different and making different types of nutrients. That's why they look different, have different colors, they taste different. That's why some uh, things in the plant kingdom. You use them for lumber to build houses or furniture. You use some of them, you cook them to get them soft enough to eat, and some of them you can eat raw because there's a difference in the genes of the different plants. But what really heralds it is the different colors that we were saying that grandmothers used to say. And again, we get a picture they say is worth 1,000 words, and National Geographic is particularly noted for its colored pictures. Next slide, please.
Beautiful.
This is emphasizing that in particularly Singapore became aware of the blue zones, and they point out that they have a very totalitarian and dictatorial government in Singapore, and that the environment that these people lived in was so important. And they said, let's change the environment of Singapore. And so they developed areas that you can only get there by going by bicycle. You have to leave the cars in a parking lot to get to important places. And the important thing is that they had such a low urban lifespan projected that they added 35 years to the life expectancy of the occupants of Singapore by developing and demanding and mandating that the city be changed to where you didn't have any choice. Well, of course, we don't like that type of government. You have a choice. But again, referring to the Adventists in California, which are not in an isolated island or peninsula, they get the benefits of the blue zones by personal choice. Next slide, please. This is something that actually brought tears to my eyes because with the war going on in the Middle East and the threat of war with China and the threat of war over Taiwan and with Russia, that in one of the blue zones, which is Okinawa, which is the very first one that I became aware of, is that they have a social custom of the women. Now, their society is primarily matriarchal, that in the home and in the family, the final word is the female. Well, that MOAI, and I assume it's pronounced Moa, that this is something that's unique to Okinawa, is that they have the women meet together about once a month, and every woman brings a contribution to a central pot of money or currency.
Mhm.
When they have got all of these donations together based on your ability to contribute, they decide who in the community needs financial support more than anybody else. And they give the whole pot to that individual to hope to try to help them. That's a very broad
Wow.
community activity that, when you consider how terrible things that human beings can do, you should never forget the most wonderful things that human beings do. Another long-term habit in uh, Okinawa is, I don't know how you pronounce that, Hara Hachiba, but it's from Confucius, a saying in the Orient, and it's an Oriental mantra that says basically, don't eat till you're full. Their habit there is to quit eating when you're about 80% full. Just as soon as you get some satiety, you quit eating and don't overeat. And they point out that overeating contributes to a lot of the gastrointestinal tract problems in our developed societies. And then the next thing that in Okinawa, they call it Ikagal, Aikigal. That is finding a purpose in life, primarily interacting with others, the family, the neighbors, the community, your religious sect, and social groups, clubs. Finding a purpose, and which again in this book by Buechner is, he says this finding a purpose will reflect in your choices and be a driving force to do these other things that you'll quit doing if you don't have a purpose. And that this purpose is essential, and that this involves your mind, which is the function of the brain, and that the mind controls all the organ systems in the body or influences it. And I have a book right here on my desk that it says, You Are the Placebo Effect. And it
Right.
explains some things that I have seen over the years of the positive and the negative, terrible effect of what you believe on your health. And this book really goes into it, even with brain scans and all, telling you about the function of the mind is so powerful in the body. And that's why finding a purpose in life may be the most important thing, that it will be what dictates to you what you're going to do with your eating, with your exercise, and your activities. That this is the driving force of what you believe and think and what's going on in your mind. Next slide. Uh, I have mentioned that Loma Linda is one of the blue areas and zones, and I want to emphasize again that the Seventh Day Adventists in the Loma Linda area are in an urban environment where it's very easy to surrender to all the modern appliances and activities. And they particularly refer to Daniel 1, first about 12 verses in the Hebrew scriptures, about when the Jewish children who had been slaves in Babylonia under King Antiochus, and he noticed that some of the young Hebrew males were strong and healthy and had endurance, and he wanted them in his service. And so he told them in this Bible verses to come and eat at the king's table so that you can have the finest wines and foods of the kingdom. And they immediately said, We will serve you, but we will not eat at your table. And he says, I want you to have the best. So they do a little test there. And the Hebrew young men says, all we want are fruits and vegetables and water, none of that wine stuff. And with their tests, they found out that they were stronger, they could work longer, they could recover from fatigue better than his servants that were eating at his table. And so the Adventists really focus on this, and it becomes an important part of their religious life. And of course, their church is very important. And they tend to, after their Saturday services, everybody brings potluck together, and they have a meal that they share together from things that they bring from home. And all of this is vegetarian. Next slide, please. In this book that we have, and I mentioned to you before, Buettner points out that being involved in your church, really participating and carrying a load and being active, is probably worth 3 years of additional good health and longevity. And he really advocates this, which is not present in the articles in National Geographic. And I have yet to see what's on Netflix. But again, Buettner emphasizes the importance of finding a purpose in life. Next slide, please. This is just a picture from Singapore, where they have, you can see off in the distance the tall buildings in the urban area, but they have put ponds with plants and water to change the environment, to be more natural and to be relaxing, and to I guess getting back to nature and getting that into your thought process is very important. And they've gone to great lengths to take areas to get over into those buildings. You got to go by bicycle and leave a car over there, and you go past such beautiful settings as this to enrich, kind of like going to the museum and seeing beautiful paintings and sculptures and all. Well, they've sculptured the environment to be pleasant and relaxing. Next slide, please. This is important. In this book, they point out research has been done that people that never weigh tend to weigh 17 pounds more than people that weigh on a regular basis every day. And I have to tell you that back when I went from 300 down to 220 pounds, I started weighing every day. And if I realized I had gained 2 or 3 pounds, it's amazing. You can take them off a whole lot faster than if you add, say, 5 or 10 pounds and realize it and say, oh, I want to try to lose weight back down to a less obese body. That on a short-term basis, it seems like you can take these pounds off a whole lot easier. And so I have that picture there from this book that those that weigh every day tend to weigh 17 pounds less than those that never do it. Next slide, please. Also, that picture is part of things that you can do in your home to try to create an environment more like the blue zones. And this slide only emphasizes that the benefits that they discovered in the blue zones weren't planned. It's just because their environments were isolated and they lived in harmony with their environment. And that's why Singapore changed the environment by dictate and got incredible benefits. Next slide, please. These are just some of the things that have been done in Singapore and other places. They have auto zones that you can't get into the central city. With an automobile, you got to either walk or use a bike. They put bike trails. The restaurants and grocery stores have been informed about the Blue Zone foods and got them to in their advertisements. And in fact, some grocery stores have a special checkout line just for the Blue Zone people, which is usually
Mm.
shorter, and it doesn't take you have to stand in line as long. And they emphasize in the markets and grocery stores and restaurants foods that have a high nutrient value but low caloric value, which those extra calories go to fat. And in these cities, they emphasize and support social groups to like volleyball, basketball, touch football. Uh, if they've got a lot of water, or rowing boats in the water, and water skiing, they promote these as a city activity. Next slide, please. Uh, they did a survey of 180, I believe it was, American cities, showing them all the benefits and the common denominators of the blue zones. Well, in response, 72 cities, city council and civic leaders and main businesses said, we want to try to do some of this and try to increase the quality of life of the people in our city and change the environment, because that's what they found out in these blue zones, that the people were just naturally doing what was available in their environment. So one of the things they did was ban smoking in public whatsoever, anywhere. And as I pointed out in the previous slide, they went to the restaurants, the grocery stores, and tried to create an incentive for people to have a healthier lifestyle. And they found out that also that this is more economical if you are compliant with the common denominators in the blue zone. So in this period of inflation and stress of economic stress, this is a good thing to do. Next slide, please. I think this is what repeats some of the other things, like
Mm-hmm.
increasing the parks and the bike trails, uh, really on their TV stations trying to reduce the advertisements for junk food. They One of the things they said in the home is to not have a TV in your bedroom or your children's room. And they point out that the grade point average for children that have a TV in their room is significantly lower than those that have no TV in their room, and that the TV set there promotes eating junk food. And they also try to encourage limiting alcohol use, and they establish and promote social networks that we mentioned before, and that there are things that can be done not only in the community but in the home, and that in this book, Buechner stresses uh, things that you can do to reduce personal emotional stress, and he promotes meditation, prayer, and writing and music to relax the body. Next slide, please. This is just things that can be done in the home that are in the book that I just got through mentioning some of them. And it even advocates getting you a push lawnmower instead of a gasoline driven or electric driven lawnmower, that everybody should maintain a garden. And we pointed out that the TV should not be in the children's room. And one of the things that I had to laugh, they said, get a dog and care for it and train it and take it out and give it walks. This is one of the reasons if you're taking care of a dog, you can, in fact, is they found out in rest homes that if the individual has a dog to take care of, that it becomes a part of a purpose to water, feed, and exercise your dog. So a dog can be healthy. Next slide, please.
Okay.
This is the closest thing that when they did that rating of 185 cities about things that existed in their environment, it was 190 cities. Fort Worth ranked number 185 in deleterious aspects of what was there. So they citywide decided that we will work on becoming more blue zone. And in 4 years, they had jumped from number 185 out of 190 points to number 58 in rank. And
wow.
in Fort Worth, they've got added 87 miles of bike lanes. They've developed workplaces in the schools. They've worked with the restaurants to have blue zone menus. They work with the grocery stores to have special checkout lines for blue zone people and to put blue zone products in certain areas. And in Fort Worth, 31% have stopped smoking. 62% indicate they have more physical activities, and they have sponsored running clubs for all ages. And the number of gardens that have increased in the families there in Fort Worth are significant to help them change their rank on blue zone environment. Next slide, please. Well, the summary is, I've kind of given it to you as we've been going along, that diet is so important, one of the common denominators, and exercise is very important. But in this textbook that I showed you by Buechner, he emphasizes unless you find a purpose in life, in interaction with your family, your neighbors, your friends, and do things together in the community, you probably won't follow through and adhere to or have compliance on your diet and your exercise unless you change your mental attitude. And this is I would say, the number one buzz going on in nutrition in this country. And I think that the activity of National Geographic is prominent as it is in publications, and it's worldwide, that this can probably contribute more to people actually understanding what my purpose was in these Zoom lectures, to try to get across the importance of a plant diet and exercise. And sometimes we even try to give subjects that get across that I'm not just doing this to encourage you to purchase New Eden, but for example, I gave one on the healthy aspects of brushing your teeth at least 3 times a day and how healthy that is. And I step back from the washing your teeth so often that I wonder if this is just a reflection on the nature of the individual, that if you will brush your teeth more often, you will pay more attention to your weight each day. You'll pay more attention to what you eat and how much. You'll pay more attention to trying to get more steps each day, that it's a reflection of the compliance that the person has of their self-discipline to pursue the blue zones. And that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you about this book.
That's wonderful. And I know you always talk about having, the spirit or the mindset within you. And Uncle Cliff just did a Substack today or yesterday talking about how our hormones and all of it's connected with your thalamus and your hypothalamus. I can't remember which one, and the frequency. Us saying being positively minded, how that affects our hormones and our whole body outlook. So that kind of goes hand in hand with that as well. Just
Well, as
with
a final comment, I put on my first bottles of New Eden. Don't take this on an empty spirit. And I think that addresses this idea of having a purpose that is supportive of your thing. And if this area of the power of the mind really you find of interest and would like to know more about it, I hold up a book that I think is one of the most important books I have ever read. It's called You Are the Placebo Effect. And it goes into great detail of how what you think and believe. I have in my lectures say, be very careful what you think and believe because it can be very deleterious to your life or it can be very positive. Well, this book, The Placebo Effect by Joe Dispenza, Dispensa, I think really goes into the reason that Dan Bruckner, in his book about the blue zones, emphasizes the power of finding a purpose in life. And certainly, I appreciate the opportunity to share with you this story and all the other lectures I've given, which I believe is an important part of the purpose of my life. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it so much, and it is such great information. Have a lot of respect for Dr. Joe Dispenza. We did another one of his books as a book study um, with some friends in a Telegram chat and did some videos on it, so you guys can check that out as well. But just more great information. Everybody stay positive. And Mother's Day is coming up, so make sure if you can get together with your mom and generations and have a meal together, celebrate family and friends. And I appreciate all of you. So thanks again, Dr. McDaniel. They
Thank you.
can reach you at the email that I have listed below the screen if they have any questions. And there is a link in the description where you can go to Dr. McDaniel's website and purchase his books and also look into New Eden and get a subscription. That's the best way to do it. And that supports me in the channel as well. So thank you all so much.
Thank you for this opportunity.